can be very good, be very poor, again, depending on how it's done. Attractiveness and convenience, new things like protecting history and agriculture are in there, and promoting orderly development of land. I mean, that's, these are some of the things to consider. Now, what you have to have in a zoning ordinance by state law, that was the thing to be included. You must have this type of things. You may consider regulation of land use, designating and prohibiting uses. You can do something here and you can't do it there. How you define those would be up to whoever's writing the ordinance. You have very broad categories and mixed use categories. Anybody ever play the game SimCity? Yes, the original game had 3 categories: residential, commercial, industrial. Very broad. It didn't say, residential wasn't single-family homes versus townhouses versus, this, that, and you can go on and on. Additionally, you can have, those are broad, but sometimes they're kind of defining. You go through places where you might want to have, there's towns now where you've got storefronts on one level, apartments on the other. It's called mixed use. Traditional Euclidean zoning doesn't like that because it doesn't compute. People are thinking, that's not really, we don't want to have our stores 5 miles from where people live. So zoning ordinances have been, and that's one thing traditional zoning has been very bad about creating. Some people blame sprawl on it. But you create zoning which allows the stores to be in the neighborhoods or allows jobs to be near people by how you define things. But again, it's all in how things are put together. Which is, some of that's flexible planning standards. Also, you get the opportunity to put in historic district design standards, performance standards, zones of land, overlays for special purposes. Often you see a historic district is an overlay district in some places. Now remember, this language is written both for municipal plant zoning and county zoning. So some of these things, that's why it may be included. Some of them may not be applicable, but I'm covering them all. Regulate characteristics, that's the bulk word I used about. But height, features, you also see things like setback, how lot coverage, and they may be. Some of them may not, you may not want to say, because if you were doing it, how far something had to be back in the street, or how much of the lot it could cover, how much to the side, because it may not be appropriate. Especially when you're doing zoning in non-urban areas. If you're doing it, zoning in a county level, some of these things that may be included may not be appropriate. But you may want to say, okay, you got to be 10 feet from the road because we don't want people running into your building. You think common sense would dictate that?
Snowplows and dump stuff in the front.
Exactly. Have non-discriminatory standards for factory-built homes. Basically, the one change that's been made to this law, and it's in another section, says that you cannot say factory-built homes have to be, you can't create a place, this is where the manufactured homes go. What you can say in the zoning ordinance is that all houses have to conform to these standards, and we don't care, independent of how they're built. You can talk about how wide the houses can be, or what the roof slope can be. As long as they're 24 feet wide and have a 312 roof slope, it doesn't matter if they're, modular, manufactured, stick-built, or just put together by mental telepathy. Not seen any of those yet, but the whole point is that you cannot separate out and treat one class special. You have to treat them all the same. You can also things about green spaces, regulating traffic flow, parking, pedestrian access. As I said, that's probably not as much of an issue for a county as a municipality, but the rules are trying to cover both. Identify and regulate flood-prone areas. You do some of that now through subdivision, through federal flood flow or
FEMA.
What's the name of the floodway regulation?
Floodplain regulation.
Floodplain. Okay, I thought it was okay.
Floodway is a specific small area in the center of the floodplain.
Okay.
In a study.
Here I'm trying to be up to date and use cool new language, and I mess up. But some of it, some of these things you already do, like the regulating flood-prone areas, that is done currently through federal regulations. doing that in the zoning, you know, would not be any different. You talk about airports and authorized planned unit developments. Planned unit development is something is where it's contained, and you, instead of looking at, okay, well, you know, saying, okay, residential goes here and commercial, you're looking at, somebody comes to you with the project in a totality, and it's like, you know, they're building a town, and they're going to put a store on it, you know, every third corner that people can walk to, and that, and you can do it as a whole rather than trying to break down the parts. Those have come into being in the last 10 to 15 years. Technical requirements. You have to, a zoning ordinance has to create a board of zoning appeals. Basically, when, you know, the board of zoning appeals, they'll talk about a little bit, that's where people go to when they don't like their a zoning decision. You specify certification requirements on the zoning district maps. You adopt the process for non-conforming uses, variances, and conditional use permits. The whole point of that last thing is that, you know, you have, there may be things that people come to you with that don't meet the specified requirements of what's in the zoning ordinance. There's ways to get around it if it makes sense. It's not, you know, like when building my house, I almost had to go for a variance to have my porch another foot out. It turned out there was an alleyway behind me, so I didn't need to do that, because you get half the alleyway count towards your, how much your back, you know, how much your setback is on the back end. But if there's little things, and there's processes for applying for those. So it's not, you know, you see the zoning, but it can be, it's set up properly, there's flexibility within it.